Welcome, everyone. You all have received information about the ward reapportionment redistricting prior to today's last meeting about it. Nothing has changed. Everything's the same. We're here to do a brief presentation and answer a few questions about it. As I was just saying, voting will open at noon today. You'll receive an email. It's coming from MailChimp, so if you don't see it, please email chair@sandovaldemocrats.org. Voting will stay open until December 18th at 5 p.m. If you don't vote by Wednesday, I'm going to call you. So just know, if you want to talk to me, and I'm going to say, why haven't you voted? Please vote. So I welcome all of you, and without further ado, so we can move it along, I am going to toss it over to our wonderful, amazing Vice Chair, Isaac Chavez.
Thank you, Alex. Let me share my screen with you guys really quick. Hold on one sec. Wasn't ready for the toss over. There we go. Come on.
Oh, that's okay. You weren't ready because I had one more thing I needed to say. If you have questions, you can put them in the chat or raise your hand, and I'll be the moderator. In the meantime, if you would all mute yourselves, that would be lovely.
Perfect. Okay, so we're just going to kind of flow through each ward, just give you guys a solid look at them, tell you the stats. We'll have a pause after each ward in which we'll take questions about that specific ward. And then in the end, we will reiterate the guiding principles that produce these wards, and then we'll take a little bit more questions and we'll call it a day. So to start, this is Ward A under the new proposed maps. This is Bernalillo plus Sandia with a little bit of River's Edge here. This ward has 11,449 people. It's D plus 24. This ward is starting in a really good spot. We have quite a bit of active Dems here, although there's still some organization that's needed here. This one is one that's going to be popping pretty quickly once we get it going. This ward is kind of in line with keeping all of the communities outside of Rio Rancho, making sure that they have at least one ward that they can use to represent themselves within the party. Cleanly, it's bound by 528, 550, I-25, and the reservation boundary. So it's really simple. This is one that's been kind of overdue. We want to get the town of Bernalillo popping. We know we can. It's blue, straightforward. Do y'all have any questions about Ward A? All right. We will move on to Ward B. So Ward B is, as you see here in yellow, this is Placitas and Algodones, and then La Madera around the back of the mountain. This ward is one of our population exception wards, so there are only 6,607 people here. It has a partisan lean of D plus 18, so pretty democratic. And it is a produced exception because we feel that Placitas is a very important community to the party, to any sort of representation. So we wanted to make sure that we had a ward that included Placitas and all of the activity we have there. Obviously, this ward is
here's a call from Henry.
Yeah, he wants you.
This ward is pretty much.
Thanks.
I mean, it's every precinct here, I believe, has a chair already. It's starting from a completely good place. So we expect great things to continue to come out of this ward, and it's pretty exciting for Placitas. Does anyone have any questions about Ward B? Go ahead, Vicky. You're muted, Vicky. Ooh. You're still muted, Vicky. You're still muted.
I just had to see how to do it because I didn't have you have to press Alt A to unmute yourself. That's a new one on me. I saw that it had the Pueblo of Sandia, did it? No, not Sandia. What did I see?
So
The
this one
previous-
doesn't have any. The previous one has a Pueblo of Sandia included in it.
No,
with
I know,
Bernalillo.
but if you could just, the way when you zoomed in, I thought I saw, no,
Into Ward B.
yeah, into Ward B. I thought I saw it had a Pueblo.
It does.
This one doesn't have a Pueblo. You can see right
San
here
Felipe.
San Felipe Pueblo.
San
This is-
Felipe. So does it
Yeah.
include the whole Pueblo? That's my question.
No, so keep in mind that I have recently found a better way to build these precincts, but these precincts that you're seeing here are my first reconstruction, and they're pretty accurate, but they're not perfect, especially where it comes to like outskirts land. So the Pueblo of San Felipe's border is somewhere in the square, but it's not really part of this. And in any case, there may be a few pieces in precinct, this is precinct 56. There may be a few pieces of land that the Pueblo does own there, but they're not populated. So in all essence, this ward will have no population from a Pueblo in it. There's also some here too, and you can see Buttigers, and then we go around the back of the mountain to La Madera. There's also some parcels of land that the Pueblos do own in that precinct. This is precinct 28, but again, they're not populous.
At the risk of offending some people from Placitas who may be on this, people in Placitas are very often very enamored in these quote unpopulated areas. There are horses that populate those areas, and I
There are
will leave
horses
it at
there.
that. I will leave it at that.
Um,
You might
Go
be able
ahead,
to
Dennis.
sell your wares there, Isaac, in Placitas for
Oh,
those who take care of the horses.
we
free
do.
range horses.
We do. Go ahead, Dennis.
How do I mute myself now? Because I don't have those buttons at the bottom.
Oof, I am not sure.
I think Alt A again
sure.
might do it.
Oh,
Alt A, thank you.
yeah, try.
So my same question, I have the same question as Vicky with respect to Ward A, because I saw a couple of Pueblo names in there, and it's not clear to
good
me
morning.
whether Santana is in Ward A or Ward B.
So,
And it looks like Sandia is in Ward A.
Sandia is in Ward A. We'll see in the next ward after B, where most of the Pueblos have landed up. But Sandia is in Ward A because it has a pretty solid connection to Bernalillo itself. It's just that division is usually made, but Santana is not. You can see it on the map here. The Santana basically starts here. And again, this is one of my, this district precinct 4 here is one of my reconstructions. So I've smoothed out this border a little bit, but it's sort of zigzaggy, jagged, you know, it follows the exact reservation boundaries in reality. And I do actually have that shape file to be able to produce that when I send these off. But what you're seeing here is just kind of my simplification for presentation purposes and stuff like that. But the only Pueblo so far in any of these wards is Sandia. We have any other questions? Alex, help me out too, because I can't see the chat that well. If you see
Yeah,
somebody,
there are no
please-
questions in the chat yet. People are just raising their hands, and you know, we only have 20 people online, so I think it's working out okay. But if I get a question in the chat, I'll certainly let you know.
Okay, awesome.
All right.
Okay, so then we will move on. Oh yeah,
Yeah,
go ahead.
can you show us, oh, there we go. Is that, now we see in would be? It's not
Thi-
clear to me.
I'm sorry, I didn't quite hear the question. It was
The illustration of Ward B, the outlines.
word B.
Yeah, It
All
wasn't
right,
clear
here
to
we
me,
go.
Ross.
Sorry, could you repeat that?
Just wanted to see an illustration of the, I see, although, so the yellow lines within the illustration are the precincts?
Yes. Yeah, so interestingly enough, we didn't really have to grant any kind of exception for precincts with our words. We did grant an exception for population here. So it's only 6,607 people. But because Placitas votes at such a high rate, they have such a high turnout, the county has split Placitas into 10 precincts here, or rather 8 plus this back mountain precinct in Algodones. So there's actually an equal amount of precincts here. But yeah, these are the precinct divisions. And again, these are my rough estimates, although I will note that I've got most of them pretty accurate. But Placitas is kind of mostly bound by 165 here. And then we have some arroyos and some other smaller streets that split it up. But each one of these has a chair in it currently. So they're in a really good spot.
Thank you.
And, you know, after this, we will be pushing out individual precinct maps as soon as I get the chance to
Okay.
hive them off and get them to everybody. But yeah, those are the precincts. And every time you see a boundary like that, that's a precinct. So
Thank you.
no problem. All right. I think we're okay. Does anybody have any more questions before I move on? No.
No questions.
No questions. All right. So then the next ward we have is Ward C, Pueblo. And so this one extends all the way from the county border to Jemez Pueblo. And it takes in pretty much everybody except for Sandia. And then the Navajo, of course not. And then it only has Cochiti Lake and Peña Blanca. So this one is a population is 11,381. And it is D plus 74, so it's the most democratic ward we have. We just had this whole argument, as many of you know, about representation. This is how you actually do that. You don't eliminate their ability to influence the whole body when you make them representative. So we've done that here. This is a ward that will be starting from kind of a low point. We don't have a whole lot of precinct chairs here, but we have many good opportunities and many people on the way who are very excited to get involved and engaged, especially after what we've all just been through. So you should expect to see more precinct chairs. You should expect to see a ward chair who we want to position to run for office. You should expect to see quite a bit of activity coming from this ward. Alex and I are already doing a lot of things to make sure that this ward gets organized and organized well. Does anybody have any questions about Ward C?
Yes, Isaac, Ward C has what population and how many precincts?
11,000.
So Ward C's population is 11,381. 5, 6, 7, 9. So it's 11 precincts.
Okay.
There. I didn't write down my item earlier, but I didn't write it down. But it's
That's
11
fine.
precincts, and most are
Okay, and so my question then is, what is the population goal for each ward? Could you just restate that for us, please?
Yes. So the goal for each ward, if we were to do this perfectly proportionally, it would be about 11,500 to 12,000. That would be the perfect range for a ward. But most of these are going to deviate, although this ward in particular is one that's pretty spot on. Most of these are going to deviate precisely because we granted population exceptions to areas of the county that we felt were important in our organization, that either they had a really solid base of organization that deserved its own entity, or organizing within them was so difficult, is difficult because of the nature of those wards that it was necessary to not make them too unwieldy. we haven't really granted too many exceptions or any exceptions for precinct. So, you know, all of these are going to be at least 9 precincts. And most of the ones that you'll find with 9 as well are in Rio Rancho, where the precincts are a bit more populous. But you can expect once we get past E, the populations will all be about 12,500 to 13. And that's just because of what we've granted. We've granted exceptions for that population equality rule outside of Rio Rancho. And that population does have to flow into some of the other wards.
Excellent. Thank you, Isaac.
Not a problem. Go ahead, Vicky.
Do we need a precinct chair in Peña Blanca?
We have one, but there is still a CCC seat that needs to be filled. And anybody that you have that is interested can certainly be looped into that area, because you know, they'll figure out a way to accommodate them. The current precinct chair may actually also be interested in just dropping down to that CCC seat and giving the precinct chair seat to somebody else. So if you have somebody that's looking for that area, definitely let us know, because we'll get them looped in for sure.
Well, so I took Catherine to visit a friend of mine, daughter of a friend of mine, but she's in her 50s. And I don't know how open she would be to it, but I'd be happy to explore it with her.
You should.
Okay.
Yeah, and let us know. Does anybody have any more questions about Ward C? I think we're all right. So then we'll move on to Ward D. We're going to head back down for just a sec. So Ward D, as you see here in pink, is Corrales and River's Edge. Excuse me. We have a population of 12,249 here, and the partisan lean is D+13. Village of Corrales is fairly democratic, and it gets a little bit diluted out by these River's Edge precincts up here. But this one is a pretty solid, pretty clean division. We have 528 being the only real major boundary here, and then we've taken in River's Edge 3 and River's Edge 2, and we split them very cleanly. If you zoom in here, this is not even a street. This is an arroyo or ditch path. So this is the split between River's Edge 2 and River's Edge 1. And then we have just the municipal boundaries of Corrales that define the remaining part of the ward here along the river, and then again here with Rio Rancho. This ward is also starting from a very good place. We have chairs for all but, I believe, 3 of the precincts here. And then we have people that are we have CCC seats quite well filled out here as well. So this is another one that we expect to do good things. We expect to be starting from a good place. It's a place that the party's already fairly organized in. And it's, of course, deserving of its own ward. Does anybody have any questions about Ward D, Corrales, and River's Edge? No?
None in the chat.
None in the chat. All right. So then we will move on to Ward E. And this one's going to zoom all the way out because this is the big rural ward. And again, this is a ward that we've granted an exception for population, although again, not in terms of precincts. So Ward E only has 6,019 people. It'll be the smallest ward in terms of population. Its partisan lean is D+14, so it's decently democratic. This is basically all of the rural communities, the small communities that we have in Sandoval County. You have Jemez Springs, Cañon, Ponderosa, Cuba, La Jara, Counselor, Torreon, and Ojo Encino. and San Isidro. So this is all the outlying areas. This is an area that will prove a little difficult to organize in, but we've got a pretty good start here. We've got potential precinct chairs for many of the unfilled wards, and we've got a plan of attack here. So we know we do need a ward chair in this area. We're talking with a few people that may be interested, but this would be the first one that may stay vacant for just a bit while we look for a ward chair. But you won't find too many of those. But we did feel it was very important to give this area its own particular ward because it has obviously very different needs from the rest of the county and from Rio Rancho specifically. So does anybody have any questions about Ward E, North County? Go ahead. Dennis, did you have a question?
Yeah, are we talking to Commissioner Eichwald at all about finding a ward chair for Ward E?
Yes.
Yes. Yes, we are.
Good.
In fact, his wife is the one that we are talking to the most. So she may be stepping up in the future, but we'll see. You know, there's a lot of options here. Yeah, for sure. Thank you. And any further questions about Ward E? All right. Okay. Ward E. We'll go down. So now we're going to start getting into Rio Rancho. And this is where we have a lot of very interesting splits, a lot of new activity going on. This is in essence the long needed splitting. That this is what needed to happen for our county party to become more organized and to actually hit at the needs of Sandoval. So what you see before you, this green square, this is Ward F, Cabazon. Basically, it's every precinct in Cabazon. It's perfect. It is 12,972 people. So this is the first of the wards that are over that population threshold. Its partisan lean is R+5, so it's a Republican area, but it's not that Republican.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah. Well, yes, we know, but it's movable. The data shows that, and this is the first start to moving that. Having a structure that's built for the community on the ground that we can organize in. So this ward is starting from a decent place. We have obviously our current Ward D chair, Leah Aki-Bakowitz is from here. We also have our data chair, Joel Wadsworth is from here. And there's a number of good Democrats here kind of starting up a pretty good organization. So we expect good things out of this ward. We know it's starting off from the ground, but there's a lot of good movement here, and I think we will see good things coming out of it. Does anybody have any questions about Ward F? All right, we'll move on. So the next ward will be Ward G, and I kind of call this one Intel Downs, but it can also be Corrales Heights or High Resort. But this is the ward that has Intel in it. Most of the population you'll see is above Intel here between, it's on the east and west side of 528 respectively. And this boundary here is Broadmoor Boulevard, and then it's bound by the Arroyo on the top. And then of course, butting up against the city, the village of Corrales right here. So the population in Ward G is 12,579, and this partisan lean is R+6. So it's another Republican area in the center of Rio Rancho. This ward is currently home to our communications chair and our fundraising chair, the Schaefers, as well as a few other pretty solid Democrats that we have in this area. So we have an outline of what we need to do here. We have contacts. This ward will be starting kind of from the ground, but this is obviously a critical area to organize in the city of Rio Rancho. These communities are all growing fast. It's dense, it's easy to walk the neighborhoods. this area is going to be critical to shifting the dynamic in our county. So we have a structure now that will let us do that. We have not yet found a ward chair for this one, I believe, but there are a few people that we're talking to. We got some leads, and I don't think it'll prove too difficult to find somebody interested in this area. Does anybody have any questions about Ward G Intel Downs?
None in the chat, Isaac.
All right. And we will move on to Ward H. So I call this one Chamisa Hills, but I suppose you could really say it's the Hills Ward, because you can see there's a lot of, you got Granada Hills, Rolling Hills, Western Hills, Chamisa Hills, lots of hills here. But this ward is dense and in the center of Rio Rancho. I should note that this is the ward that the current chair, Alex, resides in. This one is, Ward H has 12,879 people. And its partisan lean is R+3, so it is Republican, but it's less so than some of the other areas we've just seen. This ward, despite being a relatively new division, we are actually starting from a very good place. We have a lot of active Democrats in this area, a lot of contacts, a lot of organization already here. And so this area is certainly an area that deserves to have a ward within our county. And until now, it's basically been agglomerated into the massive Ward E. But I'm very excited to see where this ward ends up and where it goes, because we have a lot of organization on the ground here. Go ahead, Dennis.
So I'm a little unclear here, Isaac, as to where Vista Hills falls, because we're one of the hills. Are we in Ward H?
No, Vista Hills is not in Ward H. Vista Hills is in Ward J, which we will get to shortly. We have one more ward in between.
Gotcha.
That one and this one, but it's the Hills ward, right? You would think, but there's a lot of subdivisions in Rio Rancho named after hills.
There's more people in them than are hills. Okay, thanks.
But yeah, so this is an exciting word. I think y'all should expect a lot of good things to come out of it. I believe we already have a ward chair lined up for it, so this will be a very good structure for our party. Do we have any more questions about Ward H?
None in the chat.
None in the chat. All right. So the next word we'll talk about, I call it the Boonies. As you can see, the center of it zooms way out here in the dirt, but most of the population is over on this side. This is Ward I. The population is 12,957, and its partisan lean is R+14. So this is one of the most heavy Republican wards we will have. This is a place where our organization is lacking, to be quite frank. And we need to do a little bit better. We need to get on the ground. One of the things that came up in my informational is this area here, Rainbow. This area is actually quite Hispanic. It's a lot poorer. This is one of the areas in this ward that really gives me a lot of hope for our organization and for Sandoval County as a whole, because the answer is simple. We register voters, we get people involved, we go to this area. We do have, I believe, 2 precinct chairs in this area. We have, of course, Deb Dapson, who is a fantastic Democrat. We have, I'm not sure who the other one is, but I know that it's only 2 that we have currently here. But this structure, even though it's kind of starting from zero, this structure, I believe, is the best way to let us as a party tackle that problem, right? To get on the ground and start organizing, start building strength in these communities that we know we can build. So we're going to be looking pretty intensely for a ward chair here and for precinct chairs and for anyone in this area that would like to get involved. This is definitely a spot that's going to require some work, but I think this is the first and most important step to that work. So does anybody have any questions about Ward I?
I do, Isaac.
Okay.
The northern border is what?
So this is kind of interesting. The northern border is basically Paseo del Volcan. You can see Paseo del Volcan here, but it
Right.
sort of stops when it intersects Unser. But the line that it would continue to be is basically the northern border. And I don't know if it'll tell me what that is. I believe it's 28th,
Mhm,
28th,
mhm.
yeah, 28th Avenue here. But that's basically what the line would be. It's sort of how the precincts are kind of divided, but there's not a whole lot of population immediately adjacent to that border. We
Right,
can
right.
see that we split it pretty cleanly here with Northern Meadows being on the other side. And then the most important thing about this ward is that we did not split the North Hill subdivision. So you can see this line here, which I believe is 10th Street Northeast. This is the boundary between North Hills and what I will call the Boonies. So North Hills is another critical component of our organization. We're going to talk more about that in Ward K, but it was essential for us to keep North Hills together when we're organizing as a party. You can see, when you zoom in here, you can see what most of these precincts are characterized as, right? They're newer developments. There's a lot of desert out here. The houses tend to be a bit spaced and sparse from each other. You get the occasional, somebody bought a plot of land and built some houses on it because it was cheap, right? You can see a few of those, but most of the population here is spread out.
So I have a quick question. Is Cleveland High School in this ward?
No.
No, yeah,
It's
Cleveland
north
High
of
School's
it?
not in this ward. It will be in the ward with North Hills. So that's Ward K. This area, I will say, we do expect it to grow quite a bit. So here, let's see, this is northern, right? You can see this kind of, if you see right here, northern. It runs straight here, and northern just kind of disappears right here. But this area, we do expect to grow. We expect houses to be put into a lot of these dirt lines. We expect people to come here. So this one will grow. This rainbow is going to grow. We know that. People will plop in those new housing developments, and we will accommodate that in the future, depending on how that growth ultimately materializes. But we're definitely open to splitting further or moving some stuff around. This is the thing with this ward reapportionment. We're never going to let it get as bad as it got before. This is going to be an ongoing, recurring process that we will undertake as the party after a certain number of years. We won't let our divisions get unwieldy and out of hand. I'm happy with these divisions. I think that a lot of thought and effort was put into them, and we did a good job. But they will be out of date at some point, and we'll have to revisit them for sure. And we'll do that. We'll do that from now on.
Yes, this is going to be included. A review of our wards will be included in a biannual strategic planning process.
So do we have any more questions about Ward I?
No, thank you. No.
We will move on. Now we hit the Ward J, and I call it the Loma Colorado, but it does contain Vista Hills. So this ward, I do like the shape of it, just overall. It's one of those wards you can kind of see on the map. Like if I took the pink off, you would see it, just because this top boundary here is a dahlia. This is the Arroyo, and then this is 528. So it's really cleanly split. It does, most of the population though is down here in the southern portion close to the Arroyo. So you have Vista Hills, you have Rockaway Heights, this is Northern Boulevard, and then the Loma, Colorado. Rio Rancho High School's right here. This area is somewhat residential, but we know it's going to grow quite a bit. And then we have the less dense kind of, I call them the annex areas, so to say, La Barranca.
Uh-oh, give it a minute, he'll unfreeze. Uh-oh. So everybody, I just sent Isaac a text. And I told him that he froze and he might have to get offline and come back to us. So yeah, I think that's exactly what happened. So Deb, if you'll keep an eye out, he'll log right back in. We tend to have that problem, but you know what? You know, infrastructure. Hey, Isaac, welcome.
Sorry about that, guys. I don't know. That's just going to happen to me at every Zoom meeting from like here till the dawn of time because my internet sucks. Sorry about that. Anyways,
So the last thing we heard you say was La Barranca.
La Barranca. Okay. So La Barranca is right here. These are, I call them the annex areas because
Not again.
If it's okay, I'm going to make a quick observation while we're waiting on Isaac.
Sure,
And it's
please.
the same one I made to you, Alexandria. There is.
well, it was frozen and thought
There's
y'all
Isaac.
were
Okay,
hearing me.
So Isaac, Dennis has a comment to make. He was in the middle of a comment, so let's let him roll with that.
Sure. As
go
I
for it.
mentioned earlier, Isaac, I live in Vista Hills, and you can see Vista Hills is the southernmost tip of this ward. It's everything basically south of that hook in northern. Well, as I mentioned to Alexandria, Vista Hills has pretty good population density. If you go north of northern, there's less density because those houses are way more pricey than what you find in Vista Hills. And I would anticipate that it is way more Republican when you get north of northern. And that was a concern I brought up with Alexandria, and I would like to hear your comment about it.
Sure. It is most certainly more Republican. So for example, this precinct right here, 115, I believe was the most Republican precinct in all of Sandoval County. It voted for Trump. Like this one was like R plus 22, right? And it's exactly as you said, as you go further south, you start getting a lot less Republican. I should note that, sorry, this precinct here, precinct 100 has undergone a split. So it kind of, it makes the reporting a little bit difficult, but basically half of this precinct and then precinct 61 voted for Biden. And then remaining precincts in this area voted for Trump by about 5 to 10 points, you know, roughly, more or less. So, you know, you're right about that. The reason that we have this word the way that we have it is because it's a very clean, easy to understand split. And the areas that we're talking about here north of northern, they do have to go somewhere. And in this sense, it makes the most sense to put them with Vista Hills and use Idalia as that dividing line. As not only from like an organizational standpoint, but just from a connection standpoint. When we look at this ward, it sort of forms the center of that 528 corridor, which was a key component of that fight that we just had with redistricting, right? And every district that you see, from the state house districts that they're coming out with, the state senate districts, to the way the commission tried to do this area, it always has this structure sort of as the core of that district. And it's because it's such a clean structure in the middle of Rio Rancho. You know, you have that Idalia 528 corridor, and regardless of what the commissioners will say, that is a very that's a very well put together community of interest. And so when we're organizing as a party, when we're trying to hit this area, you know, it is very Trumpy, but following that core logic allows us to not only you know, organize and connect better along the infrastructure that these areas all use, but it makes sure that this we're hitting all of those districts that the state puts together, the Senate, the state house, the state Senate, the commission, even the municipal districts in Rio Rancho, the city council, all of them use this same structure. So in that sense, it's really helpful. I do get it, you know, that those areas, they are certainly distinct from Vista Hills, and they represent a little bit of a difference, you know, as you go north. But ultimately, we did have to put them somewhere, and this is the place that makes the most sense, at least
Do
to
we
me as a
have
map maker.
population numbers on Vista Hills versus the northern part?
Yes, I believe I calculated that. So I can do it by precinct, right? I can't do it by anything kind of less. So if you look here, this precinct 104, it actually crosses northern, so it captures a bit of what would be considered Vista Hills. So I have included 104 in my calculations for it, but that's just because it has Vista Hills, and then most of the remaining population is right here in Diamond Ridge, which is, you know, sort of adjacent to it. So when you do that, you end up with that. I don't have the exact number. I believe I have it in that email that I drafted, but it's like 8,100 people versus 3,000 up here in this list, in these four precincts. So 39, 58, 116, and 115.
What about precinct
so now-
103? Do we have population
103.
stats on 103?
I don't have them at the moment individually. So 103 is this kind of wedge one right here. It's probably pretty close to 1,200 people. As far as, if I'm remembering correctly, what it voted was, I believe, R plus 5.5. So it was for Trump, but it wasn't like overwhelming, you know?
Sounds about right. I'm the precinct chair in 103. I
yeah.
got Trump signs all over my neighborhood, except my house.
The Democrats always, they don't put out the signs, right? You know, their houses are like sane people houses. So, you know, they're there. They're there for sure. But this 103, I mean, as you know, it's characterized by, it's sort of a bit older of a development. You know, the streets on it have some cracks. The houses are a little bit bigger than they would be in some of the newer neighborhoods that you see where somebody's bought a plot of land and just split it up, right? So it's certainly got its own character, and it falls in line with these other precincts here, 104, 37, and 61. And then as you get away and you get 100, you get 101, you start to get those new developments, you know, where somebody bought a plot of land and they really tried to make as much money as they could. You know, the houses are a lot tighter. They were built more recently. So you know, in essence, you do have that shift going south too. But what really ties all of these communities together, and what was essential to my logic of making this, and I think the logic of a lot of redistricting efforts that think about this area, is that the infrastructure used here is all of the same age. This section of 528, we all know it's being redone. It's freaking annoying when you drive through here. but Adalia, right? All the major roads, they all have the same age markings as the roads that you'll see in these residential neighborhoods of 103, right? The water infrastructure is all built around the same time. All of it for even for La Barranca, you know, up north here, it's all sort of that same age. And that's what makes this area side of a nice cohesive unit, in essence.
Well, these millonarios
though-
have a lot of dirt roads. They're the ones that got washed out, and they were kind of landlocked for a while during flooding a few years back.
That's what happens when you build on all these arroyos. I know Chris will endlessly kind of knock Rio Rancho for the arroyos thing. But yeah, I do think that this is a pretty reasonable division. I know we got a lot of work to do in those 4 precincts. There's certainly Democrats there that can be reached. We'll have to figure out how to reach them.
Well, and I'll just tell you that we have some very strong Democrats in this district, just north of Northern. The Hatches live there. Jan Marfiak lives there. There are many, many Democrats up there. And from an organizational standpoint, this makes a lot of sense. It really does. No questions in the chat.
No questions in the chat. I think we're okay to move on. We certainly hashed this one out, but no, this one will be central to our organization. I should note that Barbara Jordan lives here, I believe. So this one will be absolutely critical. It's another critical ward in the center of Rio Rancho that's previously been lumped into bigger wards where it didn't get the attention that it needed. And this area will be central to how we organize the county, right? How we come and change the dynamic of Sandoval. This area was certainly very important. But I'm gonna go ahead and move on to Ward K here, just to the north. Ward K is sort of expansive. We have this big precinct here, 63, but it's populous. But if you'll know, almost all the population is down here by Paseo del Volcan. A little bit less spread out. Does contain Cleveland Heights, Cleveland High School, Sandoval Regency, all those big developments that you see along Paseo del Volcan. Those are there. It's a fast growing area. A lot of developments are being built right around the high school. You can see here when we zoom in, this what's being called Cleveland Heights. This satellite data is a little bit old. So this entire area is just full of houses right now. It's already a completed subdevelopment. And as Google Earth kind of updates its satellite data, you'll see the sprawl creeping out here. But this area we know is going to grow. And that's really good for Democrats. That's really good for Democrats. Ward K has a population of 12,532, and its partisan lean at this moment is D+4. So, you know, this is the first Rio Rancho ward that we're encountering that actually leans towards Democrats. And it's because of all that new growth that's happening out here. You know, diverse people are moving into this area. We're seeing a lot of new residents. This is an area that will favor us and should be actually pretty easy to organize within. North Hills basically forms the core of this ward, as I was talking about previously. And we wanted to make sure we kept North Hills together because all of these precincts here are blue. They're not overwhelmingly blue. They're probably only like +1, +3, but they're blue nonetheless. So this is an area that is going to be critical to us as a party. Unfortunately, at the moment, Ward K is a little bit dearth of precinct chairs, and there isn't really a ward chair lined up. But given the leanings of this area, as we continue to push and organize here, it should be very possible to fill that and start that structure popping. And again, I think this is the first step towards doing that, is acknowledging that this area is it's growing. It needs its own representation within our party. It needs a structure in which the people here can get around and can organize in. Does anybody have any questions about Ward K? No? All right, I think we'll.
Nope, sorry, I didn't unmute. No, none in the
Oh.
chat, Isaac.
None in the chat. Okay, we will move on. I will, before we move on, I just want to say here, this precinct 127, this precinct is part of Northern Meadows. So in that sense, we did split Northern Meadows. We had to do this to balance the population of the ward. There was unfortunately no other way that we could do that without incorporating upcoming precinct splits. So in the future, this precinct may find itself reunited with the rest of Northern Meadows as we get those precinct splits and we have the ability to move around smaller chunks of population. So with that being said, we will talk about Ward L.
Hold on one second,
So
Isaac.
Ward-
I do want to make sure that people know that you did speak with Taylor Peters about, I couldn't remember her last name, about that precinct's placement, and it was acceptable to the active Dems in that precinct.
Yeah, we did. We had a few emails back and forth, and it was ultimately acceptable. Like I said, though, we will probably revisit it in the next redistricting that we do. Certainly, I can show you guys this. So I'll come back to it, but this precinct here, 75, this precinct has undergone a split. And it's a split that takes this subdivision here. Just won't tell me what the name is. Sorry, my cat's getting my foot. And then this subdivision and puts them into separate precincts. And unfortunately, we can't do that split ourselves at the moment. But in the future, once that split is made, it'll allow us the opportunity to correct that. So that may happen, 5 years, 6 years down the line. But for now, they are as they are. So we'll talk about Ward L, Enchanted Hills. So this one is really clean. It's nice. It's dense. We all know this area. It's this fast growing area that's to the west of Bernalillo, uses 550. It's around Santa Ana. This is the home of our current Ward E chair. So I should have all that expansion that we just went through was Ward E. So almost all of those wards were in Ward E. And now we've finally got to the home of our current Ward E chair, Ed Lovato. So this ward here, its population is 12,009 and its partisan advantage is D+1. So it's a swing area. It's somewhat moving our way, and that's just because of all of this new development that's happening as different and diverse people move into this area. This is one we expect to kind of trend our way. And this ward will be starting from a really good position. Not only does it have the current Ward E chair, it has a lot of good active Democrats in it, a lot of potential future active Democrats that we've been talking to. And it has a very clear-cut division, a lot of neighborhoods that are easy for us to organize in. So I expect this ward to really do awesome things. I expect it to be one of our better, more active Rio Rancho wards. This boundary out here, I should note right here, this little squiggly line, that is Chayote Road, basically. And that's the only real boundary of any sort of minor significance, and Chayote Road is a major road. So even then, it's a pretty clean division. I'm happy with the way this ward turned out. And then we have Vidalia, obviously 528 and 550. It's pretty square, pretty dense, pretty clean. Does anyone have any questions about Ward L?
None in the chat.
None in the chat. All right. We're almost done. Northern Meadows. This is Ward M, Northern Meadows here. You can see as we click on it, it zooms out to quite an expansive area, and that's because precinct 118 here is basically containing all of the non-developed areas of Rio Rancho way out on the mesa. But almost all of the population, when we zoom in, is here in Northern Meadows or here in the Mariposa subdivision. So basically this ward takes in all of these newer outlying areas and gives us a solid chance to organize in them. So Ward M has a population of 12,376. Its partisan lean is D+0, so this area is quite swingy. I should note that a lot depends on where this precinct here 123 goes, because Taylor, our precinct chair there, is a great Democrat in this precinct, voted 9.3% for Biden. So moving that into Northern Meadows would actually make Northern Meadows Democratic lean. So this is an area where we're again seeing a lot of growth, a lot of new diverse people coming in, and we know that we can do well here. We know that we can organize well here. And we do have a lot of active, good Democrats here. This is the ward of Billy Heelan and Nikki Storm. I'm trying to think of names off the top of my head, but I know there's more than that. There's quite a few people here that are already involved with the party, already know the game, and are sure to produce good active things out of this ward. So this is another ward that I expect will be popping with good organization. Does anybody have any questions about Northern Meadows, about Ward M?
None in the chat?
All right. So with that, that's kind of going to conclude the map presentation. Give me just one sec to highlight a few more things for you guys, and then we'll be able to call it a day. Basically, I just want to say that these words were put together underlying the need to organize this county better. They've been developed in a way that I think cleanly gives us every community of interest that we have in Sandoval County, both those outside of Rio Rancho and the divisions within the city of Rio Rancho itself. These wards are going to let us turn the tide in the county. They are going to be a permanent, lasting change to our executive committee, to our activities on the ground, to how we run this party. And I think that change is for the better. It's fair for Ward E and for Rio Rancho to be split so many times because, quite frankly, that's just where all the population is. We have a desperate need to make that ward manageable and to be able to have chunks of it that we can get on the ground, have people who are active and who are engaged represent and be able to bring that interest to us. And I think that this is the structure that does that. So that said, you can also refer to the previous email for the exact logical points that DPSC used to develop these maps. We have each of these maps up on the website. And in addition, well, that's it. We have each of these maps up on the website. So please take a look at them if you need further looking, need further information. Please take a look at them. And I hope that you will consider voting yes for this ward reapportionment structure, because this is one of the most important changes we will make as a party, and this is how we tackle our fast-growing, diverse county. All right, I'll turn it back to Alex.
I have
Great.
a couple questions. The ballot is all up or all down, correct?
Yes,
Mhm.
No split votes.
no split vote.
And do the maps that are posted on the website include precinct boundaries?
Yes, so all of the lines that you saw in the maps that I presented, they're all there. Those are the precinct boundaries. Like I said before, it's quite interesting because in fighting with the commission, I actually made a number of improvements to how I do maps, because I had to. So going forward, the precinct boundaries that you'll see coming out of our party will be slightly different, just because I found a better, more reliable way to replicate those boundaries and make them more accurate. But the boundaries that you see in these maps, they are pretty accurate, and I'm kind of proud of that because I did all this scribbling myself, to make these precincts, and I got them pretty accurate.
But the
Yeah.
numbers are the same. Just make sure that you guys understand the boundaries may not be as accurate on the maps because they were hand drawn. Thank you, Isaac, for all that extra work. But the numbers is what we're really looking at, and the numbers are consistent throughout.
And we are going from 5 wards to 13. Do I have the numbers right?
Yes, you do.
That is
Okay,
correct.
thanks.
All right. Any more questions?
Marg?
So I just want to thank you guys. I just said it in the chat, but I wanted to say it out loud too, in case we don't have chat. Because this is an enormous task that you undertook. It's really going to help, as Isaac so wisely said earlier, it's really going to help move Sandoval County into the future. And it's something that we've needed to do for a long time, but we were still sort of burdened with the old stuff. The 5 wards we've had were set up to correspond with county commission districts. That got screwed up in the last 15 years, and we've just seen what they do to county commission districts now. So I'm glad we freed ourselves from that process. And I've having worked with other counties around the state, it makes so much sense to do this now and do it as in its great a fashion as you guys have done. So thank you, thank you, thank you. It sort of takes us into being a grown-up along with Santa Fe County, along with Doña Ana, and we're going to catch up to Bernalillo County one of these days. So on that, I just had a little throw this out. I know that Bernalillo County uses numbers for their wards, so we might want to think about that in the future after we make this.
Yes, yeah, that's a
You know,
great point.
I thought about that. I did think about that, and I just want to say, in the future, for sure, we probably will end up having to go there too.
Yeah.
But I really like the letters. I don't know. They just give it they give each of the words like a personality, I'm from Ward H. I just kind of like it, but I know what you mean, Mark. It'll get unwieldy at some point.
Yeah, no, I debated with myself on that too. And I mean, we're so used to the letters too, that it's good to transition.
And Mark, we will be revisiting this at least after every election cycle. That's going to be included in our strategic planning so that it doesn't get as unwieldy. We have Ward E with 53 precincts, right? And it's unmanageable. Best practices, and we looked at best practices show 7 or 8 precincts in a ward. So we're still precinct heavy. But we erred on the side of caution as far as organization is concerned for appointing the new ward chairs. So that's why the executive committee decided to go with the 13. But Isaac, of course, has been the hub of all of this, and he's amazing and wonderful. And he has just taken this and run with it. And he's such a valuable asset to our party. So thank you, Isaac. Are there any more questions or comments?
Yes, this is Michael Delaney. I just want to offer my own thank you to Isaac for all the work that he did, not only here, but that we saw on Thursday night. I hope he realizes how much more of a warm welcome he's receiving this morning than he did the other night.
Yeah.
Sorry if you were being bullied that way. It was totally undeserved. So again, thank you, Isaac, for not only doing your homework, but for undergoing that experience Thursday night.
It's no problem. Thank you, Michael. We expected that, to be quite frank. That's just the way they behave. That's the way they've always behaved. It was a little, I'd be lying if I said it wasn't a little bit jarring being my first time in front of that, just seeing that up close. But it's not unexpected.
You mean you've never been prosecuted before?
No, I have not. I tend to behave most of the time. So
Okay. Thanks again.
no problem.
Thank you, Michael. All right, anything else? So keep an eye out for your ballot. And again, if you don't receive it, chair@sandovaldemocrats.org. And if you don't vote by Wednesday, expect a phone call from me. It'll be a friendly phone call, but it'll still be a phone call saying, hey, we need your vote. So please, I know it's people are really busy. There was family and friends and preparing for the end of the year and celebrations. So please keep an eye out for the email, and thank you all so much for attending. We really appreciate your support and your activities on behalf of our party.